So tonight I'm going to speak on drinking the wine of Zen, practicing with a teacher. I felt called to talk about this subject tonight for a few reasons. I've had some interactions, and mostly in Dokusan, with several people recently where this matter of working with a teacher in Zen has come up in different contexts. We've also had a number of people just in the last year who've kind of joined our group, some with previous Zen experience, some without. And this is always a really important, actually, and timely topic. So it feels like now is a time to appreciate it for those of you who are perhaps new to Zen or newer to our group. And also, Zen forms are changing. They're changing very rapidly. The forms that were practiced at the Zen Center of Los Angeles by Maezumi Roshi, where I started my formal practice, were different from the more formal Japanese Soto Zen forms that Maezumi Roshi was raised in, and then Shishin Roshi's forms at Great Mountain Zen Center were different from those. And then our forms here at Eon Zen Center are different, a little bit different from those that I was trained in Great Mountain, and they'll probably continue to evolve. So, I feel like there are some essential aspects of working with the teacher in Zen that are important to maintain through those forms, but sometimes they can adjust and take different shapes or different emphases. From previous ones. For example, in the monastic community, the monks were there every day, and they got to see teachers in their lives, and in Dokusan very frequently in those schools that did Dokusan, primarily Rinzai schools. So that was just a huge part of it. We're not living together, so we don't have that aspect of it, and there's more infrequent Dokusan, so that's okay. But it's good to really understand where those forms are coming from to really make the most of the relationship with the teacher. So that's what I want to do, is explore those different dimensions. In this talk, I do want to not give a prescription for how to work with a teacher. That's not my talk, the title of my talk. It's a very even multi-dimensional matter, working with the teacher in Zen. There's different aspects, there's different modalities, and I want to leave you, or have you leave this talk with a sense of possibility, a sense of the potentials, so that you can step into a relationship with me and with, say, the teaching energy in the way that you're called to. So to open up those different possibilities and potentials for yourself. And the last prefatory thing I'll say is that your modalities may change, over time. They always do, actually. So what I'm offering you here is almost like a superset of the different types of ways to work with the teacher, and the important aspects of that in our practice, as I have experienced them and as I understand them. Knowing that at any given point, one or more modalities may be more alive for you and more present for you. So you don't have to kind of do it all at once, in a sense, but in another sense, you can actually do multiple modalities at the same time, and I'll get into that. So in a real practical way, the teacher role in Zen is very much present in Dokusan, which is one-to-one meeting, and then in Teisho, the formal Dharma talk, in terms of the formal forms that we have. So the way, you know, a teacher functions in those modes comes about through hours and hours and hours and hours of, you know, doing Dokusan with their teacher and hearing Teishos, Dharma talks. And so there is a real evolution and a maturation of that type of communication or that type of relationship. So I noticed in, you know, for example, my teacher's evolution as a teacher, you know, his Teishos and Dharma talks, I felt, you know, became richer and deeper and more, richer and deeper, I think are maybe the key words, over the course of the 20 years that I was practicing with him, and now in the 10 years since I ended formal study with him, I think that it's continued to get richer and deeper. I think that's the same of me. I hope that's the same of me, that it's getting, you know, richer and deeper, and will continue to get richer and deeper. But it's something, you know, that I apply myself to, because to speak from this place, it isn't meant to be a lecture, you know, it isn't meant to be informational primarily, it's meant to be experiential. So speaking from my understanding and from my presence is what I want to share with you. It touches a little bit on the modalities of Dokusan as well. You know, the Dokusan interaction is not just an interview in the classic sense, although that's the translation we use. It isn't even a conversation. You know, it's an encounter. So without limiting it to these kind of registers, I like to say I'm working as kind of a mirror and as a witness and as a guide. So I can, you know, reflect a path that perhaps I'm a little bit further down the path than, you know, those who come to see me in Dokusan. And then, but the you know, more powerful modalities are actually to have a quality of presence, and just that quality of presence is transformative, as many of you know from perhaps even offering this quality of presence to others, you know, which therapists and doctors and parents do. Just that quality of presence alone can shift the consciousness of the person who's being attended to and witnessed in that way. So those are some of the aspects, the practical aspects. In the beginning of you know, formal Zen practice of working with a teacher, we tend to put the teacher on a pedestal, right? They've achieved something or accomplished something in the way of awakening, and you know, there's a kind of a mysteriousness to it and an elevation, you know, and of course a kind of an outsourcing of our own, or perhaps not quite seeing, you know, our own true nature, you know. So it's over there. And that was very much the case with me. The first teachers I started with. I mean, Maizumi Roshi was very intimidating and exotic and inspiring and scary in all of those ways. But, you know, if you ever said, "What do I realistically think that, you know, I could be there?" You know, my primary consciousness that dominated my consciousness at that time, you know, would not believe that. You know, although I wanted that, you know, it was my primary consciousness, such as it is, you know, didn't believe that. So then, as a typical path of, you know, seeing a teacher, working with a teacher, moves into a place where they're no longer on that pedestal. You know, you've heard enough talks like this to recognize that, and you've perhaps experienced some of their own humanity, the teacher's own humanity and messiness perhaps, to realize that they, you know, don't, and are not asking for reverence. or devotion in that way. But there is still of quality of deep respect and even of deep surrender to that teacher. And we'll talk a little bit more about that, because that is a powerful part of the way we work in Zen with a teacher, is to have some aspect of surrender of your own preferences and your own need to control and your own ideas, about yourself. So surrendering something within yourself is important. And taking that person down from the pedestal, not having them on the pedestal, is a very important part of that, because you can't give up your power and you can't give up your agency. And if you're doing that to someone who you are also giving that type of position to and authority to, it's dangerous and it's not healthy for you. And if the teacher themselves is not clear, is bypassing some way, then it'll be a very, very bad relationship. But nevertheless, that surrender is a big part of it. And then the teacher-student relationship, if you practice long enough, it becomes one more of equals, which is wonderful. As I received transmission, and in the years after that, I found a great peer relationship, even though the earlier relationships still kind of were inside that, like not the pedestal one. I didn't last long with that one, but the respect and the respect part as my teacher and as an elder and as a senior in my lineage. I never lost that, and I still haven't lost that for my teacher. But maybe that was inside of what had become a fully, co-equal kind of relationship. So we have these terms in Zen, host and guest, which kind of talk about this relationship. It could be teacher-student, but it also is more than just teacher-student. It can apply to other similar types of relationships. And in Zen, we recognize that dynamic or that relationship can shift. It can even shift dynamically. It can shift in the middle of a conversation, back and forth. One is host, one is guest, and then one becomes guest, and one becomes host, and it can become a play. If we're in a good lively romantic relationship or partnership relationship, I think this kind of dynamic is often also very healthy. To not necessarily be equals. There's kind of relations of position that is like a dance. Sometimes one is leading the dance and one is following, and sometimes one is following and one is leading. You could say that. And I speak as one who is not a good dancer, and I don't know any of the formal forms, and Miyoku really wishes I would learn something, like tango or salsa or something, because she loves them. And maybe I will. Yeah, and then there's another, there's another dimension too, where both teacher and student, or now say both teachers and students, are servants of another. So I'll talk about that a little bit. Okay. Another sort of slice through this. The teacher archetype, if you will, or energy, is held by the Buddha treasure. And the three treasures, Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. So the Buddha treasure is meant to represent that and hold that teacher quality. And those of you who studied the three treasures, in our Zen practice, know that there's actually three different dimensions of each of the three treasures. So with the Buddha treasure, the dimensions are, there's the historical dimension of the actual historical person, Shakyamuni Buddha. And the second dimension is all teachers, formal teachers, kind of throughout space and time. So, this embodiment who's talking to you right now sort of falls into that category. And then the third dimension, and the most, you could say, personal, is your zazen, okay, your practice. Right? Those are the Buddha, those are the teacher dimensions, those three. So, just to put that fractal out there for your consideration. So, well, one more thing on that is that you can actually have, so these dimensions are not mutually exclusive. They're all present all the time. Shakyamuni Buddha, who you could say is present here right now, also in his words, but also in his consciousness, because it is the awakened one which is present. Similar to all the teachers, and I'm an embodied person here in front of you, so you have a relationship with me that's a little different from your relationship with Shakyamuni Buddha. And then you have your own zazen. So you have living, dynamic, evolving relationships with all three of these at the same time. Okay, I want to share, I think for the next part here, I want to share a few koans we have that kind of touch on aspects of the teacher-student relationship. And the first few are short, and then there's a longer one. And we'll appreciate some of the dimensions that are brought up there. Okay. So there's this one koan which we don't have in our formal practice, but in some Zen groups they chant it. Each moment, life as it is, the only teacher. Each moment, life as it is, the only teacher. The only teacher. I see this as being the Zazen dimension, that third dimension I talked about of the three treasures. That's what Zazen is, life as it is. Okay, to meet your life with that mind. That is to work with life as it is, as the only teacher. Okay, that means without judgment, without adding extra, being fully present. Really applying yourself to dropping or dissolving or not supporting the things that get in the way of you really being intimate with your life. So this one, many of you know, Book of Equanimity, case 52. Obaku instructed the assembly and said, "You are all drinkers of wine dregs. If you continue to go on your way like this, when will you have your today? Do you know that in this great empire of Tang, there is no Zen master?" A monk came forward and said, "What would you say to the fact that in various places there are people who accept students and direct their assemblies, like you, Master Obaku?" Obaku said, "I don't say there's no Zen. I only say that there's no master." Or no teachers, actually. It's translated as teachers. Okay. This is where my title comes from. Okay. He calls them drinkers of dregs. Right? But I say drinking the wine of Zen. Okay? Drink the wine. You're drinking the dregs if you're taking it from another. Okay? If you say it's only outside of yourself and I've got to get it from outside, that's the dregs. You're latching on to the echo of the treasure. Right? You're looking in the wrong place. Right? The real juice is within. But how do we find that? Right? How do we really appreciate that? Because he doesn't say there's no Zen. You could say he's not saying there's no wine. He's just saying that you've missed it. You've missed it if you think you're going to get it from someone else. You're going to get it from another teacher. Right. This can be taken, the wrong way. It can be taken the wrong way, like I don't need a teacher. That's not what he's saying at all. He's absolutely committed to the form of practice where the teacher is a plays a major role. And I didn't say that at the beginning, but those of you who are perhaps less conversant, with Zen, Zen is, to my knowledge, it's the wisdom tradition or awakening practice that most utilizes a very close relationship between master and student. It's a very elaborated and intentional relationship that is created in Zen. I've heard other Dharma brothers who practice, brothers and sisters who practice in other types of Buddhism, like for example Tibetan Buddhism. We're in a Tibetan Buddhist space here, they say they've used the term the guru principle. So the teacher, my understanding is that the teacher, the guru, kind of holds the guru principle and activates that in order to activate the guru, to help the person activate their inner guru. Okay? So there's that kind of very explicit relationship of the guru principle. So that's great. That's great. I think that's great, in theory. I think in practice, how often do students actually spend time interacting with those teachers? So what type of how is that really activated? I mean, if you're not spending a lot of time with the teacher, then the natural tendency is going to be, well, you're holding my guru principle. Okay. You've got to be really intimate in order to really take it on yourself, in my opinion. So this practice of spending a lot of time with the teacher in Dokusan and also in life in order to see how the teacher is functioning is a key part of Zen. Yeah. Okay, then we get to Mumonkan case 45. Shakyamuni and Maitreya are servants of another. Tell me, who is that other? Shakyamuni is the Buddha of the past, the historical Buddha, you could say. Maitreya is the Buddha of the future. So these are the two big teachers, capital T, the real, do we have any statues around? Who is that? Who is that? Is it Maitreya? Or is it Buddha? Shakyamuni? Okay, I can't turn around. Right? But they are servants of another. In one translation says students of another, actually. They are students of another. And then this translation is servants of another, tell me who is that other. Master Moomin comments, he says, if you can see this other and distinguish them clearly, then it is like encountering your grandfather at the crossroads. You will not need to ask someone whether or not you are right. In the verse, Moomin continues, don't draw another's bow, don't ride another's horse, don't discuss another's faults, and don't explore another's affairs. Okay. So even Shakyamuni Buddha and even Maitreya are serving another. I like this serving, okay? Because we've gone from study to service. Study to service. And that's a part of this, too, is that study becomes service and service becomes study. It moves into that. So now I want to share this longer koan, which it's only the end shorter part, which is typically practiced with as a koan. But this is about the first Zen transmission between Bodhidharma and Huike. So the first patriarch and the second Zen patriarch. Right? And some of you know the end of this, but the beginning I want to bring out as well. So Huike, this is coming from, what is this from? I think it's from the Denko Roku. No, it isn't. It's from a commentary on the Mumonkan. So at that time, so we're talking around 550 AD, beginning of Zen, there was a Buddhist monk named Sheng Kuang who was widely informed and who had been living in Loyang for a long time. This is going to be Huike. He read great quantities of all kinds of books which told of the profound principle. He sighed and said, the teachings of Confucius and Lao Tzu are but customs and etiquette, and the books of Changse and Changes, I Ching, still do not plumb the depths of the wonderful principle. Lately, I hear that Master Dharma, Bodhidharma, is living in Shaolin Temple. With this supreme man so near, I should reach the deeper realms of understanding. Studied, but there's more. Aspiration. Maybe I can find it. He went to him, wanting to be instructed from morning till night. The master, however, Bodhidharma, would give him no instruction, but sat in meditation at the time facing the wall. Kuang thought to himself, men of old sought the way by smashing their bones to take out the marrow, slashing their veins to feed hungry animals, spreading hairs to cover the muddy road in order to let the spiritual man pass through safely, or leaping off a cliff to feed a hungry tigress. All through the ages, people have behaved like this. Who am I? Deep aspiration, deep yearning, and willingness to surrender, willingness to sacrifice. On December 9th of that year, and I hadn't realized this, but this is dated, that's the date, well, I guess December 8th is typically what we date the Buddha's awakening to, but December 9th is when Ekka's experience is dated. Coincidence? Lore, most likely. On December 9th of that year, it snowed heavily in the night. Shun Kuang stood firmly without moving in the yard of Shaolin Temple. By dawn the next day, the falling snow had piled so deep that it reached his knees. Master Bodhidharma then took pity on him and asked him, what are you seeking, standing in the snow for this long? Shun Kuang sobbed and in tears begged him, please, Master, have mercy, open the gate of nectar, deliver the message that liberates sentient beings. The master said, the supreme, unequaled spiritual way of the Buddhas is accessible only after vast eons of striving to overcome the impossible and to bear the unbearable. How could a man of small virtue, little wisdom, slight interest, and slow mind attain the true vehicle? So some real important wisdom coming from Bodhidharma, the teacher at this point. Okay, this is a great and difficult matter. Okay, this is going to require a lot. This is a rare and precious thing. Striving for it would be a vain effort. After listening to this exhortation from the master, Shen Kuang secretly took a sharp knife and cut off his own left arm, placing it in front of the master. That way. Realizing that he was a good vessel of the Dharma. I see your eyes open wide. This is the first time you're hearing this story. Yeah, so quite primal, and not recommended these days. But realizing that he was a good vessel for the Dharma, Bodhidharma said, all Buddhas in search of the way have begun by ignoring their bodies for the sake of the Dharma. Now you have cut off your arm in front of me, you may have the right disposition. Okay, now I'm not going to validate, in fact I'm going to contradict this cut off your body business. But I am going to say, cut off your preferences, make sacrifices, and surrender. These are important things. The master then renamed him Huike. And Huike said, may I hear about the Dharma seal of the Buddha? So maybe he's like, okay, can you give me the nectar now? The master said, the Dharma seal is not something which can be heard about from others. Huike said, my mind is not yet at peace. The master said, bring me your mind, and I will set it at peace for you. Huike answered, I have searched for it, but in the end it is unobtainable. The master said, your mind has been set at peace. And at this, Huike had a great insight, a great breakthrough. Okay, many of you know this. Now, after this, Huike actually practiced and served Bodhidharma for 8 years after this. And then he had his bigger breakthrough, which is talked about in the Denko Roku, the transmission of the lamp. After studying formally with Bodhidharma for many years. Now we get into, okay, yeah, life itself is your teacher. It's the only teacher. Yes, your zazen is your teacher. Yes. Your gobblers of dregs, if you think you're going to get it from the guy on the high seat. Yes. You think you're drinking dregs if you think you're going to get it from the person you're going to see in Dokusan or listening to a teisho from. Yes. And the Zen teacher, in the quite specific sense, can work with you and you can work with them if you bring a certain quality of sincerity and questioning to them that can activate and mobilize this awakening. Okay, what are the qualities of it? There's that aspiration that he had at the beginning. He read all these books, but he was like, but there's this guy, so I want face to face. I'm going to go to the source here. Confucius was probably dead a long time. Lao Tzu, dead a long time. Right? I'm going to go to the source. Each of you have had that same feeling. That's important. Honor that. You have honored it. Surrender. Giving up your preferences. Not giving up your agency, but giving up your need for things to be a certain way. Your life, your practice, and your peers and your teachers. This aspect of surrendering to the teacher, that's one of the things that's really taking different form and requires different mindset, I think, in lay practice and in modern lay practice, right? Because in the monastery it was, teacher's the teacher, abbot's the abbot. It was very hierarchical, pretty much. So we don't have that relationship. The center doesn't have that organization. I don't want that type of relationship, you know, with you. And yet, for you, it is important for you to be willing to give up, you know, your preferences, to give up your way of being. You know, maybe some aspect of comfort in your life, maybe some aspect of, you know, your way. Right? Sometimes I want to not, I want to say piss people off, like piss you all off. But I don't mean that, because that's not my intention. But I don't want to give you what you want. Yeah, there's a part of me that is very intuitively tuned in to the value sometimes of not giving you what I think you want or feel you want. That's a big part of working with a teacher. Yeah, and you're smiling now, but when it happens, we'll see how you respond. Yeah, when your teacher like judges you unfairly and then just doesn't even give you a say, perhaps. I tend not to do that. That's not so much my personality. Or give you a look, or you know, ring you out before you're ready. You know, these are you know, skillful means. You know, I'm trying to use these as skillful means, so I hope that you'll take those as skillful means. And then we get to this dimension of service, you know, respect and service. So all along, you know, that's a really important part of the relationship. Mutual respect is a huge part of the relationship. So always to maintain that. And sometimes, you know, sometimes it can flip into, well, you realize that you don't really need the teacher and you're not going to get anything from them, and you could get a little puffed up with that. And then you can lose perhaps something of the sense of respect. The ego can take that on and make something of that. So that's something that I you know, tracked all through the course of my work with my teachers. You know, I had two who were partners, and to have, you know, different relationships with each of them, and to, you know, try to consistently maintain a sense of respect while also a sense of discernment, and then also that quality of surrender. It's a great practice. It really is. To cultivate all of those qualities, it's like to be able to hold those, then that's what you can offer to the world. All of that you can offer to the world. And then, you know, your function, you know, moves more and more as you mature in your understanding. Your function moves more towards, you know, one side of that dynamic in terms of witnessing and actualizing and guiding others. Yeah, but it's in that same spirit. Yeah. Okay, so I've kind of moved through some of the aspects of this. I hope I didn't pin anything down or define anything or over-define anything. Like I said, I hope this sort of opened a territory of potential for you to step into. And I'm looking forward to discussing with you, you know, after sitting for a little bit. Thank you.